Desiree, what will be announced today is the 80 additional members of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. There were over 200 names on the ballot paper. There were those whom were also nominated from the floor of conference to form part of those who will contend to form part of the powerful highest decision-making body of the ANC between conferences, which is ultimately what oversees the running of the governing party until the next conference in 2027. You've got the likes of Dr. Chilis Rachitanga contesting for the NEC, Batabile Dlamini, who wants to return, the likes of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, who lost out in this conference. You've also got the likes of Phumulo Moswale, who lost out as Secretary General. You've got the likes of Rolanda, who lost out as the second Deputy General Secretary of the ANC, and Tina Jomet-Peterson, who lost out as the first Deputy General Secretary of the ANC. And the likes of Oscar Mabuyane, who has declined to contest for these positions on the virtue that he is already an ex-officio member of the NEC. Stanley Chupu Matabata as well declined to form part of the contenders for the NEC because he's already an ex-officio member of the NEC on the virtue that he is the provincial chairperson of the ANC. Then you've got young people like Nongceba Mohlalu who are contesting to be part of the NEC, Zuko Kodlimpi. You've got the likes of Ntuchugo Makomboti. You've got the likes of Mthandeni Dlungwana, the former regional chairperson and former MEC of Education in KwaZulu-Natal. But you've also got a conundrum in KwaZulu-Natal in that they removed the name of Dumiseni Ntuli and Sihle Zikalala. We were told that he sent a letter of complaint to the leadership of the ANC in their WhatsApp group of the Provincial Executive Committee, saying that he does not understand why the names of Sihle Zikalala and himself were removed from those lists of the KZN to be contesting for the leadership of the NEC of the African National Congress. You've got the likes of Nobuhle Nkabani as well. Dr. Nobuhle Nkabani, who is the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, who's also contesting to be in the NEC. Dr. Khosienzo Ramokgopa. You've also got the likes of Khosi Maepa as well, who are contesting to be in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. But in the list that we've also seen, which places a conundrum of the alliance, we did not see the names of Blade Nzimande, the national chairperson rather of the South African Communist Party. We do not see the names of Thula Sinxisi to form part of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Also, the likes of Tito Mboweni, we did not see his name as well. But also there's a conundrum of Tony Yengeni. Tony Yengeni, at some point 2 years ago, told his comrades that he would no longer be eligible to contest for the leadership positions of the highest decision-making body of the governing party. But in recent times, with the turmoil that is taking place within the governing party, he has since become available. He was earlier on removed by the Electoral Committee of the African National Congress. They later rescinded taking him out of that 200 list because they did not know that his conviction had been expunged by the Department of Correctional Services in the country. But also there is the names of Andile Lungisa, who was returned and his suspension was uplifted by a conference and will appear on the ballot paper as well, Desiree.
Let's just remind our viewers, Samkele, of what the work of the NEC is and what the importance of this 80-member grouping is to both the African National Congress and to the nation at large.
This 80-member National Executive Committee of the ANC governs the governing party between conferences. It is the highest decision-making body between conferences. It is the highest, most powerful structure within the governing party. All other lower structures account to the NEC. All provincial powers that are given to provincial executive committees, those powers are ordained to the PECs by the National Executive Committee. At any point in time, the NEC can take away powers of provincial executive committees of the various provinces of the ANC, such as that of the PECs. The PECs delegate powers to the regional executive committees of the various regions. If those regions, for instance, are not performing well, the PECs can take away the powers of any REC. The NEC can do that as well to any provincial structure because those powers are ordained or given to those provincial executive committees by the National Executive Committee. But even within the NEC, you have the National Working Committee, which compromises and does the day-to-day working of the African National Congress and makes recommendations to the National Executive Committee, which the NEC can choose to adopt or ratify or choose to reject and take back to the National Working Committee. So in essence, the NEC operates on the matter of being the highest decision-making body between conferences, and the NWC, which is the National Working Committee, operates and does the day day-to-day operations of the governing party in collaboration with the top 7 of the African National Congress.
So the processes of closing up the conference have been moved to January because the conference wasn't able to finish up everything. How fast or slow, or what's the pace of this process that we're expecting an announcement of in the next 30 minutes? Will we see that list being announced at 10 o'clock, or do you suspect or expect there will be more delays?
We're not yet sure whether there'll be more delays, but it was supposed to be announced yesterday evening, because the counting ran up until the late hours of the morning, and thus it was then moved to this morning. The announcement will be made by the newly elected Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, at 10 o'clock this morning. But I do anticipate, with nobody of the elections agency currently here, we don't see the leadership, the secretariat of the ANC currently here at the venue, that they may delay till about 11 o'clock. We're not yet sure. We've not yet had any communication from the ANC spokesperson Mpule Mabe and the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, or the first DSG Nomvula Mukwanyane, or the second DSG Marupini Ramakgopa. But at this point in time, they are scheduled to make that announcement at 10 o'clock this morning. Those who were contesting for these leadership positions, like Dr. Chilis Rashitanga, like Njabulo Nzuza, the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, like Dr. Aaron Mutwaledi, like Dr. Joe Pahla, like Obed Papela, like Stumo Dlamini, like David Mahlobo, like Ntlangani Pontombela in KwaZulu-Natal, they are eagerly waiting to see if they have made the cut. Even Mtumzani Ntuli, even Sihlezi Galala, they are eagerly waiting to see if they have made the cut to form part of this highest decision-making body between conferences of the ANC.
Samkele, just to give our viewers a sense, when you have been a member of the NEC, and you're now left out of a new list that is announced, what sort of influence do you lose within the party?
You don't have much influence if you are not in any structure of the African National Congress within the governing party. Look at Sihlezi Galala, for example, in KwaZulu-Natal. He was voted out of the Provincial Executive Committee when he was the chairperson at conference. He lost as chairperson. Ultimately, they did not include him in the Provincial Executive Committee, so his influence within the province has waned down significantly. You look at Soviet Lechanyane in Limpopo. He lost out as provincial secretary, but eventually was elected as an additional member in the PEC. He is also contesting to be in the NEC of the African National Congress. He's eagerly waiting for those results as well. You've got Tembinka Dimeng as well, the former mayor of Polokwane municipality, who is also now the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, with Obed Papela as the deputies to Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. So they are eagerly waiting for the announcement as well. And if you are not within this highest decision-making body of the African National Congress, and you are a minister, you are at mercy of the NEC, you are at the mercy of your province, of being included as a minister, a deputy minister, a chairperson of a portfolio committee, or having any influence within the governing party. So in essence, if you are not within the leadership structures of the ANC, whether at a regional executive committee level, at a PEC level, at an NEC level, and ultimately at an NWC level or top 6 level, your power within the governing party is minimal, if it exists at any point in time or at all.
Samkele, I have to let you go, but I want to ask you this question just before I let you go about that conversation, not related to the story today, that conversation you had with the Limpopo chairperson and also premier of that province, Stan Matabata, yesterday. It was an interesting conversation, and I ask because there's a lot of interest in what the way forward is for him now. I found he was deflecting a lot in that conversation, sometimes dismissing Pimani Baloyi when she was asking substantive questions. What is your sense of what happens with Stan Matabata going forward, especially considering that he's not an appointed official, he's an elected official within the province? What happens with him going forward? Have you heard anything from the conference floor?
Well, nothing much can happen to Stanley Chupu Matabata. He is an elected provincial chairperson of the ANC in Limpopo. If they were to call a PGC can't remove an elected official. It's like a National General Council of the ANC. It cannot remove a sitting president or a sitting official of the ANC. You go back to the ANC's 2005 National General Council at the University of Pretoria, where Nathi Mthethwa stood up and told the leadership then of the ANC, led by Thabo Mbeki, with the likes of Musiwa Likota as the national chairperson of the African National Congress. He told them essentially that where is the deputy president of the ANC in the form of then deputy president Jacob Zuma? At the time, the late Bab Mendy Msimang was the treasurer general of the ANC. They had to deal with that particular matter in that the elected leadership of the ANC cannot remove a sitting or elected official of the African National Congress. A National General Council cannot remove a sitting elected official of the ANC. A Provincial General Council cannot remove an elected sitting official of the ANC, but they can be suspended, like Ace Magashule was suspended by the National Executive Committee of the ANC for defying the step-aside resolution of the ANC, but they cannot be removed. So Stanley Chupu Matabata will not be removed as the chairperson of the ANC in Limpopo. He can only be removed when they go to a provincial conference of the ANC in the province, because ultimately he did not want to come back for a third term as the provincial chairperson of the ANC. He was persuaded by his comrades to come back for a third term, and ultimately they had a touch and go plan for him to elect him again as chairperson, but ultimately to elect him as national chairperson of the ANC. But going back to Limpopo now, as they travel back yesterday or today, his power may have significantly been reduced and influence within the province. There may be those who will revolt against him as chairperson, but ultimately they cannot remove him. They can plan around him for the next conference of the African National Congress, but a Provincial General Council cannot remove Stanley Chupu Matabata. He can only be removed, or in the eventuality that they go to a provincial conference, he's voted out, or he decides to no longer contest for a fourth term, which he said he ultimately wants to retire post this third term as the provincial chairperson of the ANC in Limpopo. Should he have been elected as the national chairperson of the ANC, he said he would have only served one term as the national chairperson and retired and went on to do something else. You remember, Stanley Chupu Matabata was brought back into the country by former President Jacob Zuma, where he was an ambassador for South Africa in Switzerland. He ultimately came back, became a convener of the ANC in Limpopo after the dissolution of the Provincial Executive Committee, then led by Castle Matale after the ANC's 2012 Mangaung Conference.